Hello, welcome to I Feel Fat today. Gobble, gobble, bitches. It is Thanksgiving. Well, I guess technically it's Friday, so it's the day after Thanksgiving while you're listening to this. But for me, while I record this intro, it is in fact Thanksgiving morning. I'm at my parents' house, so I'm going to do a really quick intro and we're going to get right into it with our guest this week because I did not have time to record an intro. So it's one of those episodes. But don't worry, we got full video for the interview. But welcome. As always, follow us on Instagram at I Feel Fat Today. Follow me, your host, Kelly Taylor, at Hello, This is Kelly. And subscribe to us on YouTube where you have full video episodes. And head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. It's all I have to live for. Thank you. Gobble, gobble, bitches. Hopefully no one made you feel bad for showing up to Thanksgiving in your body. It made you feel like it was offensive to them. Hopefully that didn't happen. And if it did, shake it off. Whatever. You see these people twice, 3 times a year. If you're doing it right. Listen, holidays can be tough, but these people get old and they're going to die and you're going to miss them. So I don't want to go off on a whole tangent on that because I don't know your family situation. But yeah. I'll go into it a little bit more because I haven't experienced Thanksgiving yet. All I've experienced is being picked up from my apartment by my little brother and having to haul my dog and my little cat Babastis, who is currently mauling my hand because he is so nervous. He's never left the house, and poor Babastis, as featured on the podcast, has never left the Brooklyn apartment that he was adopted into for 2 years. And I think he thought that I was, putting him in his crate and going to drop him back off in the streets of Patterson, which I would never do. But I think that's what he thought. And last night I'm laying in my childhood bedroom and he was just digging his claws into me because he was so terrified. And I feel so bad for that. So I'm ready to get him back to Brooklyn ASAP. But okay, enjoy the episode. I hope you have and had a great Thanksgiving. My guest this week is comedian, host of Comedy Fight Club, all-around great guy. Please give it up for Matt Maran.
Anyways, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk to you because you have an interesting perspective when it comes to dieting and body image and that whole world. Yeah. Because not only are you an athlete, but you had a profession where you were an athlete. So tell the listeners a little bit about that.
So I guess, my first job, I don't think of it as my first job because it was like a thing I did, but I was in pro wrestling, was like the only thing I did in athletics when I made money.
Right.
I grew up playing every sport and just wasn't that good at them until I did well in martial arts and amateur wrestling. But when you're growing up doing that, you're not making money doing it.
Yeah.
And even if you get there's a few Olympic wrestlers who make money then coaching or with sponsors, right. But amateur wrestling, it's not a very lucrative athletic field.
Yeah.
Some guys get into MMA maybe and they can make some money there. And some get into pro wrestling.
So here's the thing with wrestling. Okay, people when you talk about it or anybody talks about wrestling, it's kind of like when Europeans talk about football.
Yeah.
It's like I know they're talking about soccer because they're European or not American.
Yeah.
But with you, it's okay, when you're talking about wrestling in high school, it's the gym.
Yes, that's
wrestling.
The mat wrestling.
Mat wrestling.
Mat wrestling. It's called amateur wrestling. The idea back originally, amateur wrestling, there's the sport of wrestling, and there was the amateur wrestling would be the athletes who would train for the Olympics. Then you can go pro, and going pro would be actually competing against other pros or whatever the type of martial art is. Back in the day, there would be carnivals, and each carnival would have a wrestler who would take on all comers, and it was you would make money being a carnival attraction as a wrestler. And then this town's wrestler would face this town's wrestler at a baseball stadium, and those were the pros. But the matches were really long and boring, so they started predetermining them to make some money.
Okay.
And
so
then
when was that?
Early 1900s, late 1800s. Back then, boxing matches were kind of fixed also.
Whoa,
it was
I
just
had no idea.
I mean, carnivals in in general are all like they were so shady. They were like just doing anything to make money.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
And so then then gradually over the next 100 years it transitioned into eventually we're doing moves that would never work in a real fight but look cool, like a drop kick,
right.
or we're doing steel chairs, we're doing crazy tables and all. And then it became such a split that it's almost non-recognizable compared to like amateur wrestling.
Right.
And I think that also might be part of the reason why pro wrestling never took off as an actual sport, because everyone just relates it to the steel chair stuff.
Right.
So even if it can be kind of boring, but the way MMA has like time limits and rounds, they actually found a way to make fighting sellable without predetermining outcomes.
Interesting.
So I got kind of recruited into pro wrestling. It wasn't like a serious, like, people inviting me places and, like, sitting down with my family trying to get me to go to their school. It was like I did some amateur wrestling, and my school didn't have a team, so I was just entering tournaments.
Okay.
So if I went in college, I would have had to try and walk on for the wrestling team. But I grew up a pro wrestling fan. I stopped watching for a little while when I started doing the amateur wrestling, because all amateur wrestlers, like, that's the fake stuff that makes us look bad. And then in high school, I kind of got back into watching it a little bit. Around the time one of my amateur wrestling friends' older brother was doing an independent pro wrestling show.
Okay, interesting.
So I started going to the shows with him, and we set up the ring, and if we did it early enough, they would let us fool around in the ring.
Oh, okay.
And maybe teach us a few things here and there.
Yeah.
We'd get on the microphone, I'd imitate my favorite wrestlers, and I was like 16, 17, and they told me I had good mic skills.
Okay.
Which I had never been a performer in any way. I wasn't in theater or anything.
You just did sports.
I just did sports. I think I played Moses in a Hebrew school play once. But, I was kind of the class clown also.
Okay.
And even like on the sports teams I was on, I was like the guy who would make jokes in the dugout and like keep the team spirits high.
Yeah.
But I never thought of like comedy performing. Once they said I had good mic skills, and they put me in like a training class that was just like beating you up.
Oh my
They
God.
just tried to get people to quit.
Really? What? Like a hazing?
Not hazing, just like crazy conditioning. Just an insane. Like first day was a 5-mile run. After the first 2 miles on the track, they gave us bags with weights in it, and then for the last mile, it was just off track up a hill. And they put us in like a basement with no air conditioning or windows, and said you can't leave until you do like, it was like 300 push-ups, 500 sit-ups, and 1,000 squats. Some like ridiculous
And
thing.
how old were you doing this?
17.
Okay.
17 maybe. Yeah, it was before. It was I said I had to say I was 18, but I was 17.
Got it.
Then I was like, so from amateur wrestling, I was like a really skinny kid, so I was like in a lower weight class.
Okay.
So for pro wrestling, I was like in decent shape conditioning wise, but as far as the strength stuff, like I couldn't do the 300 push, like that whole thing took me like 4 hours before I could leave.
Yeah.
There were a couple people there after me. One person just quit before it was over. And then the next week, only like 4 or 5 of us were there out of 10 people originally. And then we started learning how to take falls. Which do hurt.
Yeah.
They
look. I know it's like a visual thing where it's like, oh, this is supposed to look like, it caused more damage than it really did.
Yeah.
But like the sounds and
yes. You learn how to
visually-
fall in ways where you won't injure yourself, but there's
Right.
no pain-free way to do it.
Right.
And some of the things that don't look like they hurt actually do. The ropes hurt.
Really?
When you run and hit the ropes, you develop a callus to it eventually,
Yeah.
but they're not rope, because if it was just rope, you wouldn't be able to really bounce off
yeah.
it. It's like a wire cable wrapped in rope. So you have to really run into it hard. The first couple times
right.
you do
so
it,
it's not like a bungee.
no, the first couple times you do it, you're like you have black and blue marks all
Oh
up
my
and down
God,
your
that's
hip.
crazy. Petra. To the listeners, I'm so sorry. I am watching little baby Petra here. I don't know if she's ever been featured on the podcast, but she is being a terror.
Yeah.
And I'm like wildly gesturing for her to stop while we're having this conversation. So that might happen.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay, so
Yes.
that's very interesting. I
And
hadn't
so
heard
then
realize that.
so then I got thrown into a match, and then just kind of through word of mouth and like doing good enough work with the people who I was with, I kept getting booked and did that for about 3 or 4 years throughout
Nice.
college. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so the independent wrestling stuff was throughout college.
Yeah.
When did that taper off? When did that end?
Kind of during my senior year, I was getting booked less. Some of the companies I was doing well in went out of business.
Oh, okay.
And also I was like a loudmouth. I burned bridges because there's a creative side to it.
Right.
And after a few years, when I started playing the villain, and I was like in a couple of main events, and I was like good at being the villain, and I was 21 and cocky, and if I thought that whoever was running the show wanted to do something that I didn't want to, we disagreed, I had no problem letting them know exactly how I felt.
You healed too close to the sun.
Yeah, I was not very diplomatic in saying how I felt at the time.
Right.
And
you had no tact.
Yes, and I think it was just, as a kid, I was like the skinny, dorky kid. I was overly nice. And so then once I got into pro wrestling, I started bulking up, and I'm getting attention from people for the first time in my life. It went to my head.
It's like a subconscious revenge for your younger dorky self.
Yeah, and also just overcompensating of like thinking I'm not going to let anyone disrespect me, like I had felt disrespected.
Totally.
But then you just see disrespect in places that it's not really there.
Right. Yeah. You create it almost.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna go. I just want to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
All that history stuff. I'm glad you went into it.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea. But going back a little bit. So you were in sports your whole life.
Yeah.
Doing all different kinds of sports,
Yeah.
right? So for you, you've always like been very active. You didn't really have a time in your life where like the exercise like petered off, because like I talk to people who are like, oh, I went to college and I stopped running track and I gained a bunch of weight because I wasn't working out every day. So you never really had that.
I did after I stopped wrestling and started doing comedy. There's like maybe 2 years or so. There's a period in there where, because for amateur wrestling, you're training all the time. It's conditioning. And then for pro wrestling, there's conditioning. And then I graduated high school at 160 pounds at 6'2".
Right.
And I had to be, for pro wrestling, I was like working out twice a day plus conditioning. Like it was insane. So then and eating nonstop to try and put on weight for it. So then, there's a couple years where I was still kind of eating the same, but not working out as much. So I didn't like necessarily put on a ton of weight, but I was the same weight without working out.
Got it.
So there's a couple years, I see back some old pictures where I just look like a slob. But also I don't know. I feel weird sometimes when I do think it's valid if whatever someone's issues are always valid, but I do feel weird sometimes that whenever what I think is like looking like a slob or whatever, it's like I think I have a different standard because I was like in sports my whole life.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're
like if I say, God, I look like a slob there, somebody else who looks like that now may be like, what do you think of me?
Right, absolutely.
So I always try to be aware of that, but I also am kind of like, I'm going to feel about my body the way I feel.
And people are going to have what do you think of me no matter what?
Yeah.
It's a lose-lose, whatever.
Yeah.
So when you were younger and in sports, were you like, I'm trying to think of how to properly phrase this question, but were you like self-conscious or like hyper aware of what you were eating and how much you were exercising to get to a certain weight, like for the entirety that you were doing sports?
At first, no. For amateur wrestling, I had to be in a weight class, so I had to be aware at that point. But I didn't have like body issues growing up. It was more of I would practice. I wasn't very naturally athletic. That was what I was self-conscious about. I was the Jewish kid with asthma who was trying to play sports. So I was always like very studious of like the first year there were tryouts. I didn't know if I was going to make, it was Little League Baseball tryouts. And it was, at first they just put anyone in there.
Yeah.
Then I think it was like 8 or 9 years old or 10 years old, you had to try out.
Yeah.
And there were like 12 teams and only 10 people wanted to be catcher. So I'm like, if I'm a catcher, I definitely make a team.
Yeah.
And we had just gotten like the Yes Network. So I watched like all these Yankees classics and would watch the catcher every game.
Yeah.
I got like Thurman Munson's biography. He was a catcher for the Yankees in the 70s. I'm like reading that. I learned how to call pitches catches, like the way the catchers give the signs, but no 10-year-old was doing that.
Right.
But I was always self-conscious about my natural athletic ability isn't going to get me there, so I need to try and get every possible advantage I can.
Right. So you
So-
became like obsessed with
Yes.
learning the ins and outs of it. If
Of
you
anything I was
physically
doing,
couldn't-
of ball is going out of play, I'll dive into the fence. I don't care. I gotta
Yeah.
do whatever I have to do. I played goalie in hockey for a couple years, playing roller hockey because I was the only kid who wouldn't move out of the ball,
Right.
move out of the way when the ball was shot
Right.
to him.
I actually I don't watch every week, but I had time and I watched your latest podcast that you just had with Dan Yang
Yeah.
for Buff Boys.
Yeah.
And you told a story about you anytime like a kid would get hit with a pitch in baseball,
Yeah.
you were like they would always like cry and like be
Or just
real
react.
Yeah, react.
Yeah.
And you were like, if I get hit, like I'm not gonna react.
I wanted to get hit just so I could show everyone that it didn't bother
that
me.
you were tough.
Yeah.
That's
That
so
was because I knew I wasn't going to be able to outshine everyone athletically or in other stuff.
You wanted to have the
I
most
need-
heart.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was the way that I knew I would be able to contribute to the team.
Right.
And I thought if my teammates saw that from me, it could get them fired up. Like just any
Yeah.
way I can get in a team sport, I'm all about whatever the team is.
The
Then
team.
amateur wrestling is a more solo thing, so it was still the same thing. Never let them see me shook,
Right.
even if I am. But overall, that was toughness. Heart that was my chance. If I was going to be an athlete, that's the only thing I was going to be able to do.
Right.
And
Never
with,
back down.
yeah, and it worked more so with martial arts because pretty much every other sport, and even to an extent, martial arts, like at a certain point, the athleticism catches up.
Right.
When I got to high school, it's like, well, I'm not making the basketball team. Everyone else is a 6'8" black guy.
Yeah.
And for wrestling, if you're evenly matched with someone, the person who's stronger and more athletic may win. But
sure.
there's definitely people who are better athletes than me that I was able to beat because I just there was more knowledge and like harder. I put in more work than they did.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's. I kind of relate to that in like I never considered myself very smart, so I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I can like personality my way out of
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Yeah. But yes, then when I started doing amateur wrestling, I just signed up for the weight class that I weighed.
Okay.
Like there were some kids I knew who like because there is an advantage to if you can cut weight.
So is
you
this for
can-
mat wrestling?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's all weight classes.
Right.
And so if I weighed I think I weighed 125 pounds my first year doing it, and I was like, all right, I'll sign up for the 125-pound weight class.
Okay.
But there are some people who they'll weigh 140, and then they'll sign up for the 125-pound weight class, and they'll cut weight, and then when the weigh-in comes, they're 125. And then, I mean, it's different for different. I know MMA, like the UFC, does the weigh-in 24 hours before.
Okay.
And that's a lot of time. Like, this
Yeah.
will sound crazy to people who have never done this before. Guys will weigh in at 185 pounds 24 hours before the fight, and then they're in the fight. They're over 200 pounds.
That's me on a weekend.
Yeah.
I get it.
They are. You're able to. There's like. I mean, there's certainly. Doesn't sound like the most healthy thing. I know some guys in MMA who like swear by certain routines and nutritionists who like say there's a healthy way to do it.
Yeah. No, there isn't.
But
There's no possible way.
I had to cut weight once. My last year doing amateur wrestling, I hit a growth spurt. You signed up for the weight class like months out.
Okay.
So I signed up for I think it was 130, and I went and by the time I signed up to there, I hit a growth spurt and I grew. I went from like 5'6" to 5'9".
Oh wow.
So I was
In
100.
high school? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In high school that makes sense.
Yeah, I was like freshman year of high
Yeah,
school.
yeah, that makes sense.
So I was 10 pounds over, and I was talking to some of the coaches like, I don't know what to do, and they were like, 10 pounds is nothing.
Yeah.
There's guys who do more than that, and
So would that be an instance, like you said, you only had to cut weight the one time?
Yeah.
Would that be an instance where like you put on the garbage bags
Yep.
and you run
Yep.
and you just try to get
stationary
all the water?
bike, just drank a gallon of water 24 hours before the weigh-in,
Uh-huh.
and then no more liquids,
And no food, nothing.
nothing.
Just
Just
straight.
24 hours of sweating, and I slept and woke up early the next morning, I think I had to sleep a certain amount because you burn calories when you sleep.
Oh my
also,
God, yeah.
I think
They're
there was
literally
something
trying to
with that.
maximize
Yes, everything. stepping on the scale and being like, fuck, 3 more pounds.
Oh my
I haven't eaten any. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
that's not healthy.
Yes. And then as soon as it's over, I think it was that one, the weigh-in was like the morning of the matches.
Right.
So you couldn't cut as much weight and put on as much weight. But there were guys who did that all the time in amateur wrestling.
Whoa.
So yeah, so it wasn't even necessarily as much people with body issues as much as trying to make weight.
Right.
But through that, I knew like more bulimic men in my life than women.
I was gonna say it's not necessarily a body issue, like they're self-conscious, but they are not practicing and building good, healthy food habits.
Yeah, it is like they definitely were guys with eating disorders because of that.
And then who knows what that does psychologically? There are people smarter than I that probably know that they have these weird habits of gaining and losing weight for these reasons, and then they stop wrestling, and then all of a sudden they're an adult guy out in the world, and it's like, but I still throw up after every time I eat.
I mean, I did it once, and that was honestly later on when I was doing pro wrestling. I was training MMA also.
Okay.
And actually, so MMA was illegal in New York until like 2016.
Get the fuck. What?
Yeah, it was legal in like 40, almost every. I think New York was one of the last 2 to legalize it.
I didn't know it was ever illegal.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the 90s, when they started UFC, John McCain was like the one who famously called it human cockfighting.
And
so
he's not wrong.
Yeah, well, he also his wife was on like the board for Coors or whatever, and I think like Budweiser was the main. Coors was a big sponsor for boxing, who saw Ultimate Fighting as a rival.
Right.
So it was like it was all politics. And same thing. The reason it was
always is.
The reason it was illegal in New York was because like people on like the New York Assembly, whatever, had like a relationship with the like restaurant union in Vegas, which were feuding with the owners of UFC. It's always politics.
Yeah.
But because of that, the guys who I was training with in MMA, a lot of them, if they were to go amateur or do pro fights, they had to go to Jersey or Connecticut. So some people would train in New York and then move. And there were I had a couple of full contact sparring sessions because we couldn't call them amateur fights. But there was, if I really wanted to pursue it, there were possible opportunities to. I don't know if, the cutting weight thing was a thing I definitely didn't want to have to do again.
Yeah, that sucks.
And also once I kind of like saw pro wrestling, it's like the job of pro wrestling is performing every night. The job of being a UFC fighter is you fight 3 or 4 times a year, but your job is to be in training camp for 3 months.
Yeah.
And that just didn't seem as appealing to me.
Right.
And also, you get hurt in wrestling, but, it's like if I have a choice between the two, pro wrestling actually long term may do more damage to your body. Just seeing some of like what's happened to some pro wrestlers. But just I think the main thing was I just remember what it was like to have that sweat bag on and sweat out 10 pounds of weight in 24 hours, and 10 pounds is nothing compared to what some guys do.
Did you know some guys when you were wrestling that liked cutting weight? No one. Some of them may enjoy the challenge. Okay.
But it's the same way that I don't know, when you look at like people in comedy who are like, I like the really bad shows, the things that make you hurt, like because you can get maybe like
no
that.
one likes that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
There was no one who looked forward to cutting weight.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason why I asked that is because it's kind of like cutting, like self-harm. Like it's painful.
Masochism.
Masochist. Yeah, exactly. So I wonder, I'm sure there are people out there that have gone into these, cutting weight sessions and maybe, you didn't know them or maybe they weren't as open about it at all. So did you, and this doesn't have to be just for wrestling, but have you ever like been friends with or had team members or associate with people that have like crazy diets? Like I only eat a banana every day. Like
crazy weird. That probably happened more in pro wrestling, but also the
interesting.
Yeah, the amateur wrestling. We were all kids,
right?
So there were some kids whose like parents would make them eat like peanut butter smoothies and like
their
shake.
parents.
Yeah,
were like, oh
their
my God.
parents would be specific about their macros and like that type of thing.
They thought their kid was gonna be like a professional.
Sure, that's just parents in any sport. The parents who's like either they're living vicariously through their kid, or sometimes they just sometimes I think it is as simple as they see potential with their kid and they want to do. I think a lot of it, it comes from a good place of this kid could be something. I don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah.
So then they kind of go too far the other way, and they end up like fucking their kid up by being too into it.
I feel like I'm way too apt to make fun of that parent.
Yeah.
But I also have to remember, like, you know, it's like if Taylor Swift's parents didn't push her the way that they pushed her, like, she wouldn't be Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So it's like there is a degree of like have your kids stick to this one thing that they naturally are inclined to do. Like maybe they get college scholarships from it if they like work at it at this level. So I need to not be.
It's a tough line because there's some stories you hear from super successful athletes talking about what their parents made them do, and it sounds insane.
Well, did you?
But then there was good. But then there's other ones you hear about guys who could have been better, and you hear what their parents did, and it's like, oh, they were bust because they couldn't. They just didn't have a good mind for it because of how fucked up they were from what their parents did.
Right.
So
I've been meaning to watch on Netflix that David Beckham documentary.
Yeah.
I only watched the first few minutes of it, but from what I heard, it sounds like David Beckham had a dad that was like crazy, like making like he didn't have a childhood. All he did was soccer.
There was a football player who was like a lefty quarterback, and I forget what his name is, but it was the whole thing was like his dad tied his right hand behind his back as a kid because he thought it would be an advantage to be a left-handed quarterback.
Was he like?
He was naturally right-handed,
oh
but
my
he just
God,
like
that's
forced
torture.
him to be left-handed to
Whoa.
throw a football.
Did he get anywhere? Like
he was really good in college, drafted high. I think it was something Marinovich, his last name, but he flamed out in the NFL. He couldn't handle it.
Oh my God. Like if I am like holding a bunch of things and I have to like sign, like I'm at the post office and I have to sign, having to use my left hand feels like actual torture.
Yeah. Or actually Pete Maravich is like the biggest example of this in sports. Pistol Pete Maravich, a basketball player from the 70s who his dad like was all about making him play basketball 24/7.
Yeah.
Would drive him around town and have him dribble the basketball outside the car window to work on his ball handling skills.
Oh my God.
While in a moving car. If you can dribble a basketball in a moving car, you'll be able to.
Yeah.
So he was when he played, he was known for crazy ball. I think he played for the Globetrotters, like one of the only white players ever to play for the Globetrotters.
Oh my gosh.
His dad was like his high school coach and college coach. So when he was like in college, his dad just got everyone else on the team was just like a big jacked dude who could just set screens so his son could score all the time.
Oh
the entire thing was based his son still holds the record for like most points per game in a college basketball season because his team was all about him scoring.
Yeah,
he did okay in the NBA. But he just went insane. Like he died. I don't know. He died of like some medical condition. But he was like he had a few good years. Career ended early, and then he just would do interviews talking about UFOs and stuff.
Yeah, he broke.
Yeah,
mentally.
Yeah.
Not that UFOs is that crazy. But
right. There was more. There was more stuff to it.
Yeah. I was gonna say everyone's a pedophile, but like, everyone is a pedophile.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like I was thinking about Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
it's
he's
like,
got that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he is a prodigy because he's amazing. His dad made some good musicians, but like,
did he have to do everything he did?
Yeah. Man, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, my parents didn't like do that. If anything, my parents would try and calm me down because I wanted to do too much.
Yeah. And your dad's like, play the piano.
Yeah, no, actually my dad's a big baseball fan.
Okay.
My dad plays piano, but he never like pushed us into anything. My brother got a little into music, like playing bass guitar and stuff, but no, my dad used to come to the Little League games. I remember one time my dad getting mad at the umpire over a call, like they called a strike and he thought it was a ball.
Right.
And like other dads would go crazy all the time, and my dad never did. So the one time he got mad, I kind of was like, hell yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I would much prefer that, just like the one time when your dad is like, hey, that was a bad call, as opposed to the dads that like clearly had been drinking before coming to this.
Yeah.
And now they're freaking out, taking out their aggression from work at this umpire.
Yeah. No, my parents, I ended up stopping telling my parents some of the stuff. I actually didn't tell them I was wrestling when I was doing because they banned me from watching like WWE as a a kid.
Yeah.
So when I started doing amateur wrestling, I just told them I was on like yearbook committee or some shit. 'Cause I didn't want them to think I was wrestling, even though it's obviously different.
Yeah, you're trying to like sneak watching WWE, like you're trying to like catch the Spice Channel.
Well, they told me they didn't want me to watch WWE because it was dangerous. But then I was doing like the mat wrestling,
Right.
and I didn't realize there was a difference. So I just
Yeah.
was like, it's wrestling. I'm not allowed to do this.
Right.
Even though my parents probably would have been fine with me doing amateur wrestling.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
And then once I got back into watching like pro wrestling, I remember asking my dad, I was like, "Is it cool if we start watching it here and there again?" And my dad's like, "I think you're old enough. You won't try any of this stuff." And fast forward 2 years, I skipped my high school prom for my first ever match.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
The match was probably better than prom.
Probably. I mean, my high school was huge too, so it was
Yeah.
like my graduating class was like 1,200
Prom's overrated.
kids.
After
yeah.
prom is fun, but prom's
Yeah.
overrated, I
Yeah.
think. But
I
I,
mean-
I still feel like everyone should go to prom.
Yeah, there is a thing where it's like, oh, you should go to prom, and I mean, I didn't like,
I
you
guess you
know.
didn't leave a date hanging.
Yeah, it wasn't like everyone was like, oh, we can't have fun because Matt's not here. It was fine. Like,
Some girl has like a hit list
Yeah.
like, with your name on it. Like,
Yeah.
rejected me for prom.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, pro wrestling is where I really started getting into like the dieting, exercise, and like, I guess, I don't know if I'd say developing body issues, because I was skinny and I always
Yeah.
did feel like skinny and felt bad about being skinny.
Felt bad about it.
Just
'Cause
kind
you just
of.
want more muscle.
Yeah, just like as you are going through puberty, there's the guys who have more muscles, who can do the more push-ups in gym class and all, and those were the guys who the girls liked.
Right.
So there was always like some of that. But I also would always hear that lifting weights stunts your growth.
Yeah. Okay,
So I didn't want to do that because
You
I'm
didn't
like,
drink coffee. And
yes,
you didn't
I didn't. Yeah,
lift weights.
Yes. My senior year of high school, your gym class could be a specific thing. So it was like, instead of just a regular gym class, you would have like tennis gym, lacrosse gym,
Okay.
and one of them was weight training. So my junior year, it's the last 2 years, junior year they give you, I was in tennis and lacrosse gym. Senior year you got to pick, and I picked weight training.
Yeah.
Like I'm 17. At that point, I think I still grew, I was like 6 feet tall, and I grew like an inch or two
Yeah.
after that. But I'm like, I hit 6 feet.
Yeah.
I'm good. I don't need to worry about stunting my growth anymore.
That's so funny.
So I did this weight training class, but I still didn't really know. I just knew I didn't want to be skinny.
Right.
But I hadn't really started like training for pro wrestling yet. Once I started doing that, then it's like some of the other wrestlers take me to the gym with them and start showing me and these are like 250-pound monsters, half of them on steroids, and like
Yeah.
I'm 160 pounds. Like,
When the guys were on steroids, did you know that they were on steroids?
some of them,
Or-
I'm sure.
or-
Yeah, I'm sure there were some I didn't know, but some of them I knew were.
Okay, so it's not like you looked at their physiques and was like, "How can I achieve that?" You knew. That,
I knew
like,
them
oh, they're
personally,
using-
so I would
Okay.
talk to them about their workout
Oh,
routines.
okay, yeah.
Um,
So there was no like, it's not like how everyone now has an Instagram filter on your face and you're looking at it
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh, why don't I look like that?" Because it's a filter. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of your body. Everyone's body is different. Genetically, you're different. So there are times where I would take like friends of mine in college to the gym with me, and they'd start working out for a few weeks and would get more results than I would in those few
Right,
weeks.
yeah.
Like I'm naturally skinny, so it was always harder for me to put on weight.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, there were other guys who could. I always felt like I always felt like I was just fighting against my body wanting to be Jewish.
You're trying to
Yeah.
lift the Jew out of you.
Yes, because I would feel like I had to. I mean, if anything, it kind of helped that I had kind of the work ethic I developed from having to like work harder just to be competitive in sports. That I would look at it as it felt like I had to do like 10 times the work to get 1/10 the result of other people who were just genetically more gifted.
Yeah.
But I never looked at it as poor me. I looked at it as, well, I'm just going to work out harder.
Yeah. That's just part of your deal.
Yeah. And but yeah, for a long time, I think whoever you were when you were 12 or 13 years old compared to the people around, that's who you think you are forever.
Yeah.
So I always think I'm skinny.
Yeah.
It's like I constantly am. I only recently have like been okay with getting leaner. Because I was always like, since I've been out of wrestling, I always kind of stayed bulky. Where I was still strong, but I was just like, I was a big guy.
Right.
And I broke my arm last year.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, so when that happened, I couldn't work out. And
Right.
over the last few, there was like a couple years where I was out of working out, but then I just got back into it, and I just, I feel better mentally, physically, and it's to the point that even if I'm not in the gym, I do like bodyweight workouts every morning.
Yeah.
Which I just need to do because on a rest day when I don't go to the gym, I'll feel like I did nothing. So I just do body weight every day, and then that allows me to take rest days when I need to, because as you get older, I'll be like, you fuck up your joints, you fuck up.
Yeah.
You
No,
can
it's
you can
important.
overtrain.
Yeah.
So to prevent me from overtraining, I do just like push-ups, resistance band, just like calisthenics in my apartment.
So you do like these apartment calisthenics every day,
Yeah,
no matter what.
no matter what.
Do you have this feeling of like something bad's going to happen, like universally or like to you if you don't do that?
Almost a little bit. It feels like almost like the step on a crack, break your mother's back thing.
Like
Yeah,
if
there's a
I
little
don't
bit of that.
do
Yeah.
This plank.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am someone's gonna get into a car accident.
Yeah. Oh, there's times where I usually do it in the morning when I wake up. If I have to be up early for something, and I'll do it in sets of 25 usually, just to not go too. And I do 100 push-ups every day.
That's like insane. It's not insane.
Yeah.
But that's like impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
At least. I think now I've been getting to more, but I do 4 sets 25 when I wake up, within like half hour of when I wake up. And there's been times where I'll only get to like 50 or 75.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I'm going somewhere, I'm like, all right, well, when I get there, I'm going to the bathroom and doing like
Oh
another.
my god.
Yeah.
If I ever walked into a bathroom and saw you or anybody doing push-ups in the bathroom,
Yeah, yep.
I would.
I don't think anyone's ever walked in on me. I think it's usually private bathrooms, but I have had times when I've done like road gigs and
Please
stuff.
tell me you wash your hands.
Of course, yeah.
I mean,
I have
don't
had
know.
times doing road gigs, or just times where when I was in Israel, we were like for birthright, we were rooming with people, and the first thing one of the guys, we had to pick our roommates. One of the guys was like, do you have any weird habits or whatever? I'm like, I'm gonna randomly be doing squats and push-ups, but
I feel like you
yeah.
randomly like will take like a fake swing.
Yeah. Oh, a baseball swing. Yeah. Got to work on my swing.
Got to keep that
Yeah.
mobility.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is definitely a psychological. A few weeks ago, I was just out partying with friends, and one of them took a video. I was doing karaoke, and someone took a video of the room. And in the video, I thought I looked really skinny, and I went to the bathroom and had to do 25 push-ups.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I had to get a pump going. I didn't look that good in that video.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Take a shot every time Matt leaves the room to go
Yeah.
do some push-ups.
Yeah. People think I'm going to the bathroom to like do coke or something. That guy's
You
going to
come
the
back
bathroom.
slightly
Yeah, exactly.
sweating,
Yeah.
a little red.
Yeah, wiping my face off.
Like, what's Maddie got,
Yeah.
man? Oh, yeah, no, that's not weird or compulsive at all. That's
Yeah.
totally normal.
Yeah.
I mean, there are worse things that you
Probably,
could
yeah. I
do
mean,
and-
my compulsive stuff is for exercise, which
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things is not that bad.
Yeah, and it definitely seems like it, fights off depression and stuff. Like,
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think that's the other thing where if I don't go to the gym or like have workouts, even if I do my body weight stuff, if I don't go to the gym for like more than 2 to 3 days in a row, I think I start to mentally unravel a little bit. Just little
Yeah.
things like, I think it just provides balance for me. I'll just get more negative. I'll start like, especially in comedy, I get a lot more because I feel for me the gym is it's the most fair place in the world. Yeah, granted, genetics are different for different people, but if you lift the weights, if you do the work, you will get results.
yeah,
And you can't kiss someone's ass
yeah,
to lift a
you
higher
can't
weight.
personality your way out
you
of
can't.
it.
You
yeah.
can't. There's no nepotism in
Right.
getting bigger. So, when I'm in the gym, that like provides it's like my balance, so that if someone in comedy gets something that I feel like I may have deserved more, that's just the way things are. But after a few days of not being in the gym, I'll start to like get more upset about that stuff.
So you were probably down bad last a little over a year ago. That fateful Halloween.
Yes.
When you broke your arm.
Yeah, I mean, I was in physical therapy 3 days a week, which was doing something physical.
Yeah.
And that did, at first I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But actually the physical therapy helped because I would do physical work, and then all of a sudden I could move my arm a little more.
Yeah,
So there
so you saw
was
the
progress
progress.
happening.
Did you
and
try
there-
to
yeah.
push yourself beyond the progress? Like,
No, I think when I was younger I would have.
Right.
At this point, I know enough to know that overtraining and overdoing stuff
You've
can
been
have
injured
more
enough.
can have more of a negative effect.
Totally.
Yeah, as I've gotten older, I've learned to listen to doctors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, especially in pro wrestling, you're injured all the time.
Yeah.
Something's hurting all the time. I wrestled with a broken foot, like 3 fractures in my foot, and
I
had
was
a
just
match.
gonna ask,
yeah.
like, was that like the worst injury you got while doing the wrestling? like-
Probably. I mean, concussions is one that
Yes.
may actually be worse.
Yeah,
long
no,
term.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now that we know a little bit more about CTE.
Yeah, and those. I mean, yeah, and
Okay.
yeah.
Arguably, though, this is what's so crazy about life.
yeah.
Arguably, all those concussions saved your life.
Yes, yeah, because I ended up having brain surgery for a thing I was born with
Yeah.
that they
so
found because I got looked up for concussions.
You had a congenital.
an arteriovenous malformation. It's a malformation of blood vessels.
You had a tumor in your head.
It's more like a blood clot.
Okay.
Because a tumor implies
Yes.
it's like cancerous or benign, but it wasn't a tumor.
It wasn't a tumor.
Yeah, it was like a blood clot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had a mass in your head
Yes.
that was like the size of like a golf ball.
Yes. Yeah.
That you wouldn't have known otherwise that you
Yeah.
had, but because you had this history of concussions and you had like your mood was
I was
weird,
having
you
mood
were-
swings, anxiety, and stuff, and decided to get looked up for concussions. And they tested me on stuff and were like, "Oh, a whole bunch of stuff is messed up."
Yeah.
And I started doing concussion rehab, and then went to a neurologist to be like, "Hey, is this kind of the good stuff to be doing?" He's like, "You're doing everything right. Let's give you an MRI just to make sure there's no bleeding from old concussions or whatever."
Yeah.
And then they just found this thing I was born with.
Because you had that MRI.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
So if I had never had the concussions, I may not have ever gotten looked at. I wouldn't have necessarily thought anything was wrong. I would have been like, I'm going through some stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so you look at that because you had these mood swings. You weren't acting like yourself.
Yeah.
Like you had to act on that
Yeah.
because it was erratic, I guess.
Yeah.
And then to find that because like if I have a kid and they want to engage in something that causes them to potentially get a disease like CTE where
Yeah.
like you murder your fucking girlfriend
Yeah.
or something, like I'd be like, no, I don't want my kid to do that. I don't
Yeah.
want them to get a concussion ever.
Yeah.
But then look what it did for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It saved your life.
Yeah.
Because that just would have like killed you one day.
Yeah, they don't know how it didn't because it's usually found in people who have an AVM. It's usually found in either kids or autopsies. It's the thing that
Whoa.
like people, if you ever hear a story of someone in their early 20s just having an aneurysm, that's probably what they had. And
Yeah.
they estimated that mine bled over 100 times. And every time I looked up online because sometimes doctors tell you how
Yeah.
risky things are just to make it sound like we saved your life.
Yeah,
and we
totally,
should,
totally.
So I like looked it up online. Every time an AVM bleeds, it's like 15% chance of death.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So they have no idea how.
You gotta
like,
play the lottery.
yeah, like 20. I was 28 when I had the surgery, and they're like, that's old for someone who has this. But I was young for someone who had brain surgery, so the recovery, like 6 weeks, I was fine.
That's so
Yeah.
crazy that you had your head cut open.
Yeah.
It feels like the recovery on your broken arm
Yeah.
was more intense.
Oh, for sure. The broken, the post-sur, I mean, the brain thing was like scarier and more risky up to that
Obvious.
point.
Yeah, because that's
But-
life threatening.
But the recovery of the arm was way worse. I was completely back to normal within 6 weeks to 2 months after the brain surgery. The arm wasn't back to normal till almost a year.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Damn. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
That really. It's just crazy. It's always how. In doing this podcast, I've had so many conversations with people where as I'm talking to them, I'm like, oh my God, the universe. I hate
Yeah.
to sound like this person, but
Yeah.
like, whatever is out there has our back.
Yeah, I always didn't want, after the brain surgery, there was a lot of people saying stuff like that, and I didn't
it
want to
probably
think.
was annoying.
Not even that it was annoying, it's just that I can't think that because then I was in the ICU with like this 12 other people there.
Right.
Not all of them, and I'm like, it would feel weird for me to think the universe has a plan for me but didn't for them.
Well, maybe their plan was to die.
Maybe, but I don't know. I don't know. It would make me, if I believed that, it would go to my head, and I would start to feel like I'm here for a reason. It's like I'm just gonna go
Well-
back to hosting Fight Club. I'll just,
Well,
yeah,
it's not okay. I don't necessarily subscribe to the "you're here for a reason" thing
Yeah.
because my calling in life literally feels like sitting and watching Housewives. Like that's
Yeah.
my favorite thing to
Yeah.
do. Like I just want to watch reality TV.
Yeah.
I just want to eat. I want to cook.
Right.
You know, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe the purpose is just to be here. Like, and we don't.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. You know, oh, we're supposed to be here for a reason because we don't know if there's anything or what is on the other side of like these like meat suits that we're in.
Right.
It's just interesting. It's just
Yeah.
like, and then you could get hit by a bus. It's
Yeah.
just crazy.
I mean, it definitely, I don't take as, I probably took more things for granted before than after. Just things like my parents invite me to go on a vacation with them that they'll pay for, and I'm like, no, I got to do comedy.
Yeah. Now
After
you're
post-brain
like,
surgery, I'm like, let me enjoy life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good perspective,
Yeah.
like a good takeaway from
Yeah.
something like that.
In general, yeah, I've always kind of had that, like, overworking myself, whether
Yeah.
it was sports, even in school, in elementary school, I was, like, very, like, straight A's, everything. My parents had to tell me, like, you can relax a little bit and do, like, don't fail your classes, but,
Yeah.
like, I was, like, studying, reading, doing everything nonstop.
like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
we don't care.
Yeah, and then I kind of became like the class clown a bit after that. I still did like well in school, but it was like, if I give like 80 to 90% and have a little bit of fun, I can still have like a 90 instead of a 97.
Yeah.
And I'm fine.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then I think post brain surgery, I mean, with comedy, it's like if all you do is comedy nonstop, you're not really living a life, and that's also not good.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, I was like, I have to, when I first started, there was like one summer where I was hitting like 25, 30 open mics a week,
Yeah.
which I think did make me better, but it's not sustainable.
No.
And I think it's like once a month now, when the weather's nice, I go upstate and go hiking.
Yeah.
Just like,
Get away.
do stuff like
Clear
that.
your head.
Yeah.
There is something, especially in this like digital age, there is something to, I think, not having your phone, not having Wi-Fi
Yeah.
is work, even if you're not doing anything.
Yes.
Because you're letting your mind rest.
Yeah.
Because I love going for walks. I love just like, taking the dog and going for a walk. And I still have like everything to stop the noise, just
Yeah.
like going into my ears, podcasts, music, audiobooks, like.
Yeah.
And then I went on that cruise with my little brother
Yeah.
a few weekends ago, and I wrote so much material because I didn't have Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So I didn't listen to podcasts. I just like was just had the sights and sounds around me
Yeah.
as I sat there.
I actually
know?
do what I write a lot sometimes in between sets in the gym.
Yeah. That
My
makes
mind's
sense
in
to
like a
me.
good place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I find that like, even though I have like so much noise going into my head when I'm going on a walk, it's almost like it's background because like I am like thinking of like jokes and stuff or like
Yeah.
going over my set in my head. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else? So we talked about you feeling like a little bit like when you had to take that downtime off from recuperating.
From like the brain or the
Yeah.
arm, broken
The
arm.
broken arm.
Right. Well, so yeah, the other thing was after the broken arm, I was like, I'm not going to be able to work out as much. So when I was like wrestling, I was like my diet
okay,
was
that's
very.
what I want to ask.
Yeah,
Yes.
my diet was I was dieting and working out, and then kind of when I'm doing comedy, it's like, for me, anytime when I've like put on weight or kind of gotten like chubby and it looks bad, it's like I know the things to do to diet and exercise to take it off.
So were you concerned about gaining weight during that time of not being able to work out?
A little, yeah. So at that point, I was like, I started eating healthier and eating cleaner. A lot of times, like, I can't meals. I'm usually pretty good with. My parents growing up always used to like say strike up the bland for my meals. Like I would like my mom would come out with like here's lemon chicken tonight, and I'm like, we just made my chicken all lemony. Like just give me the chicken.
You
Like
just want
yeah.
the chicken.
I have a big like sweet tooth, so it's like junk food. And then
Right.
times in my life where I just like don't care and I'll just eat whatever's there. I'm like, I'll just go to Popeyes. I'll just do that. But after the broken arm, I'm like not gonna be able to work out as much. So let me start eating healthier.
Okay.
And then I was mostly eating clean, so I didn't like put on weight.
You just have the discipline.
Yeah,
you just
and
are
I
able to stop yourself from.
yeah, and I think it's more of I don't know. I always hesitate to say like it's easy because I don't think anything is easy. I think it's just that anything you do or you've done a lot is like easier for you at any job
Right.
that you do. What you do in your job. I worked at a Starbucks. If you took somebody who's never worked a cash register before and put them on register during a rush hour at Starbucks,
I would rather die.
yeah, it would be, you wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
Once you've done it, it's not that bad.
Yeah,
So that's kind of
absolutely.
how I am with dieting, is that I've done it before. I know the things to do. When I was like, I started when I was like 17 or 18. When I was once I really got into like the lifting and dieting for pro wrestling, I kept like notebook logs of everything I did.
Of like a food journal and an exercise
And
journal.
exercise, everything, sleep. I had how
Whoa.
much I slept.
It was an Apple Watch on paper.
Yeah, basically. I read some like workout book that a pro wrestler wrote, and he had notebook logs.
Okay.
And that was just the thing. I was like, I'll write down everything I do, because a lot of everyone's body is different and reacts differently to different things.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out what works for your body, what gets the results you want for your body.
Right.
So I would write when I went to sleep every night, when I woke up in the morning, so I knew how much I slept, when I worked, what my workout was, what I did, what I ate, and I would have on a scale of 1 to 10 how I felt after everything I wrote in there. And I would put notes in at the end of the day or after a few months of where shoulders looking good, this workout maybe overtrained here, like just little things like that. So things like my arms don't develop as much as the rest of my upper body. If I work out my
Right.
arm, if I do different muscle groups and I work out just biceps, triceps one day, shoulders one day, back one day, my arms aren't going to look at. So I mix it in where I do my biceps and triceps twice a week.
Right.
And other parts of my body I only need to do once a week. So just you learn little things here and there based on when I eat versus when I work out, how good the workout is. So there's just things at this point I know will be better or not better for me.
So how long did you keep that journal?
It was like 3 or 4 years. It was pretty much the whole time I was doing pro wrestling.
Okay, this was during your pro wrestling.
Yes, and so then since then, I kind of just have the track of what I know I need to do.
Yeah.
And when I sway off of it, even if for a year or so, like I always know that it's
go
kind of
back.
my baseline. So I knew when it was like, all right, I want to start eating healthy. I know about how much protein I should be taking in. I know how to get that protein. I know what protein supplements I like better than others that I have better results with.
Yeah.
And you're always kind of learning things. It's just I don't keep the notebook logs anymore because I think I know my body well enough that when I see something not working, I can notice it immediately.
Yeah.
And when I see
trained
something,
yourself
Yeah.
classically
Yeah.
on how the machine of Matt Maran
Yes.
works.
So when there are certain things where I didn't have a good workout, what did I do? I know the things to look at because I had looked at them many times before.
Gosh, one
Yeah.
day when America is an ancient civilization, your notebook is going to be found within the rubble.
Maybe. I mean, there was I went through like 7 or 8 of them.
And you're going to
over
find
years,
this
yeah.
collection of notebooks that'll
Yeah.
be deemed like the machine man
Yeah.
archives. And it's like this was peak physical form what
Yes.
people used to do.
Yeah. March 20th, 2012,
Yeah.
Matt Maran did 120-pound barbell rows or whatever.
History has shown
Yes.
that an autistic man
Yes.
kept track of every single movement he ever made.
As we
for-
can see here, August 19th was a back and biceps day.
That's great though.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I'm a little jealous because I will like buy like a fresh notebook. Like this
Yeah.
is going to be the notebook that changes my life.
Yeah.
And then like I get a few pages in and it's just like, okay, well now my grocery list is in there. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'm like, well, I can't use that notebook anymore because
Yeah.
it's tainted. It's not,
Yeah.
it doesn't have its original purpose on it anymore. So then it just
Yeah.
like trash now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just knew that I was I mean, I think it goes back to even like learning how to be a catcher. It's like anything I'm going
Yeah,
to
you
do,
like really get
I
obsessed
need
with
to be obsessive about it because that's going to be I always think the best advice I just ever heard in general is control the controllable. That there's so many things in your life out of your control, no matter
Yeah.
what field you're in. I would hate if any opportunity or anything I did that didn't go my way happened because of a thing I could have done differently.
Yeah.
So I'll go out of my way to be obsessive with everything I can be obsessive about.
Right.
So that if something doesn't go my way, it wasn't going to go my way.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's say you have plans. Okay, let's say it's like, Saturday and you have plans to meet up with a bunch of people and then the plans don't happen. You know, someone gets sick, they can't go. Does that throw you off?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
You get fucked up by it.
In general, if I have a plan, that's my plan.
That's your plan.
Yeah, and then if it doesn't happen, maybe I can try and figure out something else to do.
Right.
But yeah, I try to know what I'm doing. There's been times where it's like I think this plan might fall apart, so I have a backup.
But you're probably so much more keenly aware of if plans are going to fall
Yeah.
apart more than somebody that
Yeah.
like isn't like this.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, you have like sonar for
Yeah.
when things are gonna not go your way.
Yeah.
Not your way. I don't mean it like that.
But if something if there's something I'm looking forward to or I'm thinking could happen, I'll in my head be like, okay, well, what if it doesn't happen?
Yeah.
Then what do I do? If it does happen, what do I do? If it happens this way, what do I do?
Yeah.
It's
Damn.
yeah. Yeah.
That's so funny that you like like I feel like people don't know that this is how you are.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Because I wouldn't
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely could see that you're somebody that likes things to like go a certain way. Like even with your podcast, like you have like your like it starts the same way and it ends the same way.
Yeah.
Like it's just the same.
Yeah.
But it's funny that, you know, you are
I mean, I don't like freak out when things like don't go my way
you don't
either.
throw
Yeah.
like a temper tantrum.
No, I
like,
never. If someone's like,
did you
we
as
were
a
good.
kid?
I don't think so. I think I don't know, because I mean, growing up, it wasn't never necessarily the way I lived my life. It was the way I like played sports.
Right. Okay.
So I didn't like. No, I'm not like neat and organized necessarily. I was.
Yeah.
It would be like, you know, every year for school, I would like set up this section for this subject or whatever, and then 2 weeks later, it's not that
It's a
anymore.
mess. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was. It's honest. It's only really for things I really care about.
Yeah. Okay.
That I'm obsessive. Like for wrestling and working out, it was like I'm a skinny kid and I need to get bigger. One, for pro wrestling, and two, as I was getting bigger, I was like getting better bookings in wrestling. It's all of a sudden
I mean,
now.
there was an obvious
Yeah.
upside.
Yeah. And then even now it's so after eating healthy with the broken arm, then once I was able to actually start exercising and working out again, I was kind of like, let me just continue eating healthy also. And then I'm like, I'm getting leaner, and also as you get older, it's not necessarily as good to carry on as much weight as you were. I remember when I think my biggest when I was doing pro wrestling, I got up to like 225, 230 or so, and I was like big. It wasn't like a bad 230.
Right.
And then I would kind of float between 210 and 220 over the last several years. So I'm like, I don't need to be as big, but I also like getting over 200 pounds when I was on the way up was such a huge deal.
Yeah.
It was. I remember having a friend of mine was like a guy I went to high school with was like 220 pounds, and like he was like 5'7". He was a bad 220, and I had gotten up to like 175, 180, and we had a bet whoever can get to 200 first. He was trying to lose weight.
And
I was
you were
trying to gain.
weight.
And I got there first, but just the idea that I could say I was over 200 pounds was just like when I'd watch WWE and they announced the guys' weights, which now I know are bullshit.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting.
Oh yeah, a lot. I mean, my weights were bullshit when they
Yeah.
would announce me. My biggest wrestling, I was 6'2", I'm 6'1.5". So, but your wrestling boots had like an inch lift in them, so I was 6'3" in wrestling.
Lies.
and,
It's all lies.
I mean, they were saying I was 225 or 230, even when I was at like 210 or whatever.
Right.
They were always
But
always
no
add
one
a little
knows the
bit.
difference.
No.
Unless you are like,
Yeah. And especially on TV, a lot of guys like they're really cut, and when you're cut, you look bigger than you are. My dad has told me he thinks I'm bigger now than when I was like 225, 230 pounds.
Right.
Because I'm leaner and a little more cut.
Yeah.
But I've been like, I'm kind of around the same now, but I was like losing weight for a while, and I stopped looking at the scale once I was getting down towards 200. I'm probably like 200, 205 now. But if I may be under 200 and I'm not looking at the scale because I can't deal with psychology. I know it's better for me.
So you have scale issues as well.
Yeah, but it's the other way. If I don't
Right.
want to see a number under 200 pounds because then, I mean, I already, as I'm getting leaner, I feel like it's healthier and I like being this way, walking around health-wise and everything.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm skinny and weak.
Right.
Yeah.
You still have that psychological thing because even though you're, working out on a consistent basis and
Yeah.
getting outside validation like what your dad told you,
Yeah.
you still have that mental, like, if I see the scale, give me a number that I don't deem acceptable.
Yep.
It upsets me.
Oh yeah. I'll think
You hear
I'm
that, ladies?
Yeah.
Even
Yep.
boys deal with this.
Yep.
This
Yeah.
is not gender specific.
Yeah. I remember I would always compare whatever my height and weight is to what I would see like on like Yahoo Sports what like different athletes are. Couldn't look at basketball there, but like football
Right.
players. And at one point I was like, I'm like a big strong safety or maybe a linebacker here. And now I'm like looking, I'm like maybe a wide receiver or a cornerback, and those guys aren't that big. Like
Yeah.
yeah. And I always was like, I wanted to be one of the bigger guys. Because
Right.
pro wrestling, it's all about you walk down the ramp and a kid looks up at you and goes, "Whoa, look at that guy."
Yeah, like
That's
you're
what
supposed
you
to be
want.
this Adonis-like figure
Yeah.
for like,
Or at
the
least a
character.
a big intimidating looking person.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even now, I know I should, but I never really cared about aesthetics as much in working out. Like guys who are like bodybuilders or powerlifters, I was always training athletic and functional strength, and I wanted to be strong, and I figured as you do that, the look will come.
Okay.
But anything that's like an exercise just for aesthetics,
So there are
I have-
exercises that are specific just to like making your muscles look more defined.
I mean,
I'm
there's
confused.
skinny homeless dudes with six packs. Do you think they don't have stronger abs than other guys who are
Right.
like bigger power lifters who you don't see their six pack, but they're like huge dudes?
Yeah, but they're like bricks, right?
yeah.
Right.
So there's like if you have six pack abs, a lot of times all you're really good at is doing a lot of sit ups.
Right.
But you don't have necessarily as
The
much core
functionality.
strength
Right.
as others. So I do I do ab strength workouts. And there's times in my life where I've like had abs, and I'm like, all it's really good for is taking pictures.
Right.
And
Right.
I
Which
think
is pretty
it's
good.
Yeah, that's not bad. But anytime that I do ab stuff, and sometimes I'll do like just the crunches, which it's better than not doing anything.
Yeah.
But planks is like core strength. I'll do the ab crunch machine, and like there's guys who have better abs than me that if we both went on a weighted ab machine, I could lift way more than they could.
Right.
But it's for me it was always like strength, being strong, being big. It wasn't really about like being able to see an 8-pack
Yeah.
or anything.
Yeah.
Like any time I've had abs in my life, they look okay now. They're not as but it's like almost been like by accident.
Right. Yeah, it just kind of came with the territory.
Yeah, or even pretty much any like certain things, especially when I was wrestling, I had to be aware of how I looked. So there were certain things of I don't want to have like skinny legs or skinny arms. If part of my body's developing a certain way, I would like make adjustments there.
Right.
So there was like some awareness of aesthetic. Like if something looks bad, I don't want it to look bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I always think of, I'm in comedy now, so it's like I'm in great shape.
Right, yeah, comparatively.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I grew up my whole life playing sports, and I still watch a lot of sports. Like what I'm seeing all the time, like what I compare myself to, what I think about, I follow a lot of like fitness accounts on social media. So I don't feel like I'm in like as good shape as other comics will tell me I am.
Right, right. But in
Yeah.
reality, it's like in terms of fitness, you're a big fish in a small pond
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah, there's always I have enough awareness to realize like over 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds is larger than most people.
Right.
So certain things like when I've had like needed medications for certain things, I'll know that I need more to have an effect on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
it's
things
like
like
women
yeah.
taking Plan B.
Yeah.
If you're over a certain weight, you have
Yeah.
to take 2.
with edibles, it's like 'cause I've only done edibles over the last few years for the first time, and it's always like so I'll have a low tolerance because I haven't done a lot of them, but
Yeah.
I'm physically like I'm aware that I'm physically above average,
Yeah.
but I also psychologically don't feel that way.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get that totally. It's so much of like winning in life is getting over the psychological aspect of anything.
Yeah, but I think there's been times in my life where maybe it had more of an I overall feel like I know I don't like as long as I have more checks on myself now where I don't overtrain and I like put the a lot of times I'll go to the gym before work unless I'm working too early. If I do like super early morning workouts, I don't have as good of a workout like the wake up
Yeah.
at 5 a.m. type
Yeah.
workout.
I mean, I can't do anything early in the morning.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've known people who that's like how they work out.
Yeah.
I always need to do a little bit later in the day. Even if I get up at 8 or 9, if I have a later day or something, I can do that. But I needed I'm trying to. I think I just lost my train of thought. Brain surgery.
Yeah, we were just talking about the psychological
Right.
aspect.
That I'll go to the gym a lot of times before work if I'm working a little later, just because then I have an out time and I need to be somewhere before a show.
Right.
Because then if I just work out with no end time, I'll just want to
be
stay.
there. Yeah.
And I'll do more than I should for my
You
body.
can't shut the valve off.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of I think I know where to put the checks in. And that, I mean, if the worst thing I do is do push-ups in a hotel room around my friends,
Right.
I guess it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I mean, there are worse things
Yeah.
for sure. Interesting. Okay. So we're winding down here a little bit. Thanksgiving is this week.
Yes.
What's Thanksgiving look like in your fam?
So we have like cousins in Long Island who come over to my parents' place out in Queens.
Okay.
So I'm just going there, and
What's the food look like?
turkey, stuffing, sweet potatoes for the most part. And I was never a big my thing is like a sweet tooth. So it's the dessert after Thanksgiving. There's too much of that. Going back to my parents' place in general, they'll just have like potato chips, Ritz crackers,
Just so
which
much junk
that's
food.
that's not I guess that's not really sweet tooth, but just junk food.
Yeah.
And I have the discipline where I won't buy this stuff in the supermarket. But once it's in the house and around me, I have a tougher time just not going and grabbing it.
Yeah.
So when I'm back at my parents' place, I generally don't eat that well. But Thanksgiving-wise, I'll probably just have turkey and sweet potatoes.
Yeah, that you're not
Yeah.
like crazy about the Thanksgiving
Yeah,
food, but
yeah.
you'll fuck up a pie.
Pie isn't really a big one for me. It's
or
more
like
yeah.
like a dessert.
Dessert,
What's like your favorite Thanksgiving dessert?
They start bringing out some just chocolate chip cookies even.
Right.
Yeah, just
Ice
any
cream.
cookies, ice cream. Yeah, back in the day when I had a faster metabolism when I was younger. Even in general, I always was a skinny kid struggling to put on weight.
Yeah.
But now stuff will stay on me more than when I was 21.
Right.
But when I was like putting on weight for wrestling, the reason I kept notebook logs too was like I was told by my coaches like I wanted to do steroids and they wouldn't let me to put on
God.
weight. Yeah. But they gave
Who knows
me like
what steroids would have done to your fucking
I mean yeah.
your brain thing.
Yeah. But they gave me like a workout and diet plan and kind of it was like 4,000 calories a day, 200 grams of protein to 250 grams of protein, something like that. And I don't know if I wrote down like all my protein, but I wrote down everything I ate. And I would have it. I think at first I had an idea of what the calories were, and then I kind of since then, even now, I pretty much eat the same stuff every day. Now now I've been eating healthy over the last year. I eat like the same things every single day.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I'll cheat, and my cheat is every once in a while like go out with some friends, like get a bad meal. But for the most part, it'll be like junk food on the way home every once in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would a lot of times if I was at low on calories back in the day, I would just have a pint of ice cream at the end of the night.
Whoa.
But I was working out twice a day,
Yeah.
and I had a fast metabolism. But back then, yeah, my meal I was in college, so I was just had a meal plan. I would just like work out. Student Activity Center had turkey burgers. I have 2 or 3 of those post workout.
Yeah.
Muscle milk. I would go to there was a Wendy's on campus. I'd get 3 or 4 grilled chicken sandwiches and just take the bread off and just wrap it in lettuce and just eat lettuce and chicken.
Wow.
Just yeah, and even now I kind of have an idea. I still try and get 200 grams of protein. I don't need to write it down. I just like have an idea of what I'm eating throughout the
Yeah.
day.
Photographic food memory.
Oh, I mean, I just know this muscle milk lean body shake, and I eat the same double chicken bowl at Chipotle every day, a Whole Foods box with a whole bunch of grilled chicken thrown in there. I kind of just know what I'm eating, and
Yeah.
sometimes if I stray from, I mean, Whole Foods and Chipotle is like pretty much all I eat.
Yeah.
If I ever stray from it, though, it's like I'll go to Blimpie or Subway and get a 12-inch grilled chicken sandwich,
Yeah.
which is, I just kind of, I still have an idea of what I'm eating.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow. Rough life. No,
It isn't really. I mean,
no,
that's
that's
yeah.
what I'm saying. It
Yeah.
sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I mean-
you're saying rough life sarcastically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It's
I mean,
well, because I mean, some people who haven't ever done that think like, oh, it would be so hard for me to do that. But that's also just how
that's Tuesday.
Yeah.
That's fucking Tuesday. You said if you needed the calories to finish a pint of ice cream, if I
I mean,
didn't
4,000 calories is a lot.
if I didn't finish a work project and now I'm stressed over it,
Yeah.
I'm like that's like I don't do it now, but
Yeah.
like yeah.
And I mean, at this point, I'm not doing 4,000 calories
Right,
anymore.
right,
That
right,
was
right.
when I was like young and trying to put on a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Now
No,
I'm
yeah.
probably 2,500, maybe to 3,000.
Interesting.
But also some of that is I recognize I'm physically larger. Average, I think, is like 2,000 a day.
I don't know.
um,
Yeah.
And sometime I'll probably be around there. So I'm not as into it as I used to be. I'm doing comedy. I'm not wrestling anymore.
Right.
So I'm not trying to be in like that kind of shape. I'll never be in as good shape as I was when I was like doing that kind of conditioning.
Yeah,
But
and
I'm
it's
okay
not
with
front
that.
Of mind.
Yeah.
You've like we've said before, you've kind of just trained yourself to know
Yeah.
what you need to be intaking because when it was a top priority,
Yeah.
you committed to it.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah, I try and just think feel good, look good, and that's all that's important.
Yeah.
But some of that psychological stuff is still in there with just like, being over 200 pounds, being able to, I mean, I think being in comedy has helped me if I was still in wrestling or around athletes in some way, I might not be able to have like leaned out and gotten healthier because I would have just been trying to be bigger around everyone.
Yeah.
So thank God all the people I'm around look like shit.
Thank God for comedy, I
Yes.
always say. Amazing. Oh, well, this is great. I think we've definitely done an hour for sure.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. Thanks
this
for
is-
having me. Yeah.
Where can people find you?
At Real Matt Maran on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. I forget to throw that one in there,
Yep.
but I'm on TikTok. And at Comedy Fight NYC or YouTube.com/Comedy Fight Club for the Roast Battle Show and the Buff Boys podcast with Joe Gorman. We needed Joe on there. We needed some eye candy for the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. He's the. I mean,
Eye candy as in a chewed up wad of bubble gum.
yes, I have a sweet tooth, so that's why I like Joe. And we're the Buff Boys. He's the real muscle of the podcast, but I try and hold my own.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yin and yang.
Yeah.
If you will. Amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on.
For sure.
So insightful. You've taught my listeners so much about the world of wrestling.
Yes.
More than I ever thought I would need.
Yeah.
No, it was so great.
And men hating the scale also.
Yes, I
From
love
the other
that.
direction. Sometimes I feel weird talking about it because most people's but the shows I feel fat today.
Yeah, and
my
that's
issues
a very valid thing.
and my issues are like if I ever look fat, I'm like I can get rid of this.
Yeah, no.
Which is not likable.
I think that's a gift.
That I've struggled to put on weight in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I think people can get because I had a very skinny brother growing up, and I was
Yeah.
always just like, how come we look so different?
Yeah.
But it'd be like that sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next Friday. Bye.